Okay, so I was asked to speak about gender and public space in generally, or it was up to me to choose the topic. And I decided to speak about gender mainstreaming and feminist urban planning as tools developed already on the municipal level of some cities. For me, it's an interesting tool how to speak about or how to think about a city and how to make a fair shared city. But I will also ask some questions from the side of feminist critique, because I think that we can think about it also in a different way. We can also open some questions about the real impact of gender mainstreaming. I mean, social impact. I was dealing with this topic as a curator of the Era 21 magazine with the topic liberated space, and it was one of the main topics of this issue. When we are speaking about gender mainstreaming, we can also mention the beginning of this thinking about public space in relation to gender, because it was obviously the second wave feminism who somehow opened these questions. I choose as a first image. I choose the quotation or the beginning of the manifesto by Leslie Keynes Weisman, which was published in '81 in the magazine Heresies. Not. Huh? Something wrong? Is this Helena? Or can you help me with it? I don't know. It's not. Okay, so the magazine Heresies was the American magazine published from 77 to 92, and they brought the two issues with the topic of feminism and space or architecture. In 77, it was the topic with the topic of patterns of communication and space among women, and in 81 it was the issue where this manifesto was published, and it was making room, women and architecture. And you can see that at the beginning it was quite activist and a little angry, because it was for first time when women started to see public space as non-neutral, as gendered, and to see the problems what it brings to women in the movement in public space or in being visible in public space. And then we can also see the first associations or organizations of architects and urban planners dealing with topics related to women. So it was Women Design Service, founded in 84 in London. So you can see the topics of their publications. And then Matrix is also quite known. It's a publication from '83. So it was the beginning of this kind of thinking, and related the space to gender, and try to think about it and find the most important problems what it brings. And gender mainstreaming is a tool who is the most developed today in Vienna. We can say it was also somehow developed in different cities like Berlin or Stockholm, for example, where they call it more like feminist urban planning. But in Vienna, it started already in 90s. In the beginning of 90s, there was a social democrat politicians who started to make workshops, like also kind of consciousness raising groups for architects and politicians, for women to speak about the city and about the everyday life of women in the city. And it ended up with the exhibition in 91 called Whom Does the City Belong? Everyday Life of Women in the City. It was in former Messepalast, in today Museumsquartier. And then they created, in municipal level, the city created the Office for Women. And then the really detailed analysis and research started. In Vienna, they were making a lot of sociological research and interviews and workshops with citizens, and they started to speak and think about the city as a space of different target groups with different gender or age, and about their trajectories in the city. Here you can see the most like known maybe division between people who are having some care tasks or care and household tasks, and the people who are just going to work. I don't want to make this gendered division now about men and women because it can be too easy. But the fact is that according to their analysis and according to their researches, it's mostly women who are always now persons with care tasks, and it's men who are mostly having these easy trajectories to workplace, home, and shopping, for example. So, and also they're thinking about the name of this tool, like gender mainstreaming in urban planning. It wasn't also so easy as for example, Eva Kyle, who is the main face of this big gender mainstreaming thing in Vienna, told me that, for example, around 2000, it was for them quite politically hard to speak openly about gender mainstreaming because the atmosphere on political level also in Vienna changed. So they started to speak about the different target groups, for example, and these alternatives. But now, as I feel and see, I think that now it's again more used, this term gender mainstreaming, and even in these Swedish cities, they are talking more about really feminist urban planning. So they are developed different tools how to make the city fair shared, how to make it accessible for people who are having these really complicated trajectories during their everyday life. They are developing the manual for gender mainstreaming parks, for example. This is Rudolf Bednar Park in Vienna, where they make or they push architects and urban planners to adapt this set of rules. How for example, the different zones according to the place in park. For example, the places for for children, for like adolescents, are more far from the housing, or there is a playground for little children next to the cafe, for example, for parents. They were also making big research or workshops with children and adolescents dealing with their using of playgrounds, because they found out that, for example, the girls around 14 years old, they are not so visible in public space. And so they were just thinking how it's possible and what they are missing, and they found out that these traditional playgrounds, or these typical playgrounds with these fences, for example, for ball games, they are really often used by boys, and boys are more active to use them, maybe also more supported, like socially, and girls didn't have any place to be, so they were at home. So they try to develop with girls the sport playgrounds also for them, and spaces that can be interesting for them to use in parks and public space. So as you can also see here, the gender mainstreaming is really about details in the city, which these details were historically mostly by these traditional urban planners, quite invisible, and now they can play really big role in this tries to make the city fair share. And so it can be really small things like barrier-free ramps, benches, accessible pathways, or some children-friendly zones. The other tool, what was developed by the city of Vienna, how to create more fair city, was where the competition for women architects called Women Work City. It was just for women architects because, as Eva Kyle told me, they have a really big problem that in this municipal, like the competitions set by the city, they were not women architects. They didn't participate to this. It was like zero till, I don't know, 2000 or something. So they developed this just competition just for women architects, Women Work City, and their goal was to create more family-friendly housing estates. These are other details of gender mainstreaming in Vienna, how to try to change the thinking about the people in public space according to gender. Yeah, and so I will just, and when we are looking these main goals of gender mainstreaming, I will just read the main topics. It's like strengthening a polycentric urban structure, a city of short distances, high-quality public space, safe city, a barrier-free city, planning and construction geared to the requirements of the daily life. It's Vienna, and in Berlin, in this gender mainstreaming manual, you can read that the main goals are diversity and flexibility of space, options of social usage, space of communication and interaction, reconciliation of professional and family work, security, sustainability and protection of natural resources, and participation. So, as I said already, the gender mainstreaming or feminist urban planning is about details. That through these little details, we are looking at public space, and we can see inequalities. And what is important for me, we can also see how the power is structured in the society. It can look just banal, but I think that we can also see it in this philosophical way. And through these things and details, we can see how the society is thinking about women or caregivers in general. But on the other side, we can also open some questions about it, because gender mainstreaming is working with the data and analysis of status quo and try to somehow help to develop it. I would like to mention one research made by Charlotte Fagan and Dan Trudeau from Macalester College. And it's a study about two neighborhoods which adopted the rules of new urbanism in US. It was in Minneapolis. And new urbanism also prioritize, you can say, the main or similar goal as gender mainstreaming in urban planning or feminist urban planning. It means dense, socially diverse, multi-use places that feature an accessibility array of transportation modes and inclusive public spaces. And the result of their research is, when they are making research about the real impact for women in these spaces, how it really influenced their life and their how helps them this, how these tools help them to manage their role in the family and society. And they found out that new urbanism does not offer a new neighborhood strategy that empowers women, precisely because the built environment of these places assist with completing existing transactions and do not necessarily lead to transformations in the gender division of labor. So the women can easily do their everyday work for the family, for the household, taking care of children. They are more part of communities. They are less alone, for example, but their role in the family doesn't change dramatically. No. So this is one of questions which is also interesting for me regarding gender mainstreaming. It can be maybe quite provocative, but the question what I would like to bring to our discussion is if the fair shared city as we know it now from these examples is enough for help women to be more visible and important in decisive positions in society. Does it help the persons with care tasks to be more active on political and decision levels? If there is a fact that the persons with care and household tasks can use the city more comfortable and are more visible in public space, it can be some breaking point in these questions. So this is my impulse.